In a world of ancient traditions and expectations, one woman carried a silent, heavy burden. Her name was Hannah, and her heart ached with a deep, unanswered longing. Year after year, she watched other women in her community cradle their children, their laughter echoing a joy she could only dream of. Hannah was married to a man named Elkanah, who loved her dearly. But love, however deep, couldn't fill the emptiness in her arms. Elkanah had another wife, Peninnah, who had been blessed with many children. And Peninnah never missed a chance to remind Hannah of what she lacked. Every day was a trial. Peninnah's words were like sharp daggers, twisting in a wound that refused to heal. She would taunt Hannah, flaunting her sons and daughters, making Hannah feel small, insignificant, and forgotten by God. The family's annual pilgrimage to Shiloh, where the sacred tabernacle stood, should have been a time of joy and worship. But for Hannah, it was the peak of her suffering. Year after year, as they went to offer sacrifices, Peninnah's provocations would intensify, turning the holy festival into a personal nightmare. Hannah would weep so much she couldn't eat. Her husband, Elkanah, would try to comfort her, saying, "Hannah, why are you crying? Why don't you eat? Am I not more to you than 10 sons?" He loved her, but he couldn't understand the depth of her sorrow. His words, meant to soothe, only highlighted her isolation. This year, something was different. Hannah had reached her breaking point. The constant ridicule, the silent tears, the feeling of being utterly alone, it all came to a head. As her family feasted, Hannah slipped away. She walked towards the tabernacle, the house of the Lord, with a heavy but determined heart. She had cried in private for years, but now she was taking her brokenness to the only one who could truly understand. She entered the courtyard, her body trembling with a mix of despair and a tiny flicker of hope. She fell to her knees, her face buried in her hands. She didn't shout, she didn't make a grand spectacle. She prayed silently from the very depths of her soul. Her lips moved, forming words only God could hear, but no sound came out. She poured out her heart, her pain, her anguish, her deepest desire, laying it all bare before the Lord. "Oh, Lord of hosts," she whispered in her spirit, "if you will only look on your servant's misery and remember me, and not forget your servant, but give her a son, then I will give him to the Lord for all the days of his life." It was a desperate, bold, and selfless vow. She wasn't just asking for a child to end her own suffering, she was promising to give him back. Watching from his post at the door of the tabernacle was Eli, the high priest. He was an old man, and his eyes were not as sharp as they once were. He saw Hannah's lips moving, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs, but he heard no voice. He jumped to the wrong conclusion. He thought she was drunk, disrespecting the holy place. He approached her, his voice stern. "How long will you keep on getting drunk? Get rid of your wine." Imagine Hannah's shock. She had just bared her soul, at her most vulnerable moment, only to be misunderstood and accused. It would have been easy to get angry, to feel even more defeated. But Hannah, with grace and humility, looked up at the priest, her eyes filled with tears. "Not with wine. Not so, my lord," she replied softly. "I am a woman who is deeply troubled. I have not been drinking. I was pouring out my soul to the Lord. Do not take your servant for a wicked woman. I have been praying here out of my great anguish and grief." Eli looked at her, truly looked at her this time. He saw the raw honesty in her face, the profound sadness in her eyes. His heart softened. He realized his mistake. He saw not a drunkard, but a woman of deep faith. He raised a hand in blessing and said, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant you what you have asked of him." A profound change came over Hannah. His words, a simple blessing from a man of God, were like a healing balm to her wounded spirit. She stood up, her burden suddenly lifted. The anguish that had clung to her for years seemed to melt away. She went back to her family, and for the first time in a long time, she ate. Her face was no longer downcast. She hadn't received a physical sign or a miraculous announcement, but she had something just as powerful: peace. She had left her problem at the altar and trusted that she had been heard. The family finished their worship in Shiloh and returned home to Ramah. And then, the miracle she had prayed for began to unfold. In the course of time, Hannah conceived. The dream that had seemed impossible was becoming a reality. The silent prayers, the bitter tears, the desperate vow, God had heard it all. She gave birth to a son. All the years of pain vanished in that one perfect moment. She looked at his tiny face and knew exactly what to name him. She called him Samuel, which means heard by God. She explained, "Because I asked the Lord for him." His very name would be a lifelong testament to the prayer that brought him into the world. Hannah did not forget her promise. When Samuel was old enough to be weaned, probably around the age of 3 or 4, the time came for her to fulfill her vow. This must have been the hardest thing she ever had to do. Can you imagine? After all those years of longing, to finally have your child, only to have to give him up. But Hannah's faith was stronger than her own maternal desires. She had made a promise, and she intended to keep it. She and Elkanah journeyed back to Shiloh, this time not with sorrow, but with a joyful sacrifice. They brought their precious son, Samuel, to the tabernacle. Hannah walked right up to Eli, the same priest who had once misjudged her. "Pardon me, my lord," she said, holding the little boy's hand. "As surely as you live, I am the woman who stood here beside you praying to the Lord. I prayed for this child, and the Lord has granted me what I asked of him. So now I give him to the Lord. For his whole life he will be given over to the Lord." And there, in the house of God, she left her son. Her only son, the answer to her deepest prayers. She entrusted him to the care of Eli to be raised in service to God. It was an act of incredible faith and sacrifice, but Hannah did not leave in tears. Instead, she broke into a beautiful, powerful prayer of praise, a song of joy that has echoed through the centuries. She celebrated God's power, His justice, and His faithfulness. She rejoiced not just in the gift of her son, but in the God who gave him. Hannah's story doesn't end there. God's blessing didn't stop with Samuel. After she honored her vow with such unwavering faith, the Lord blessed her even more. She went on to have 3 more sons and 2 daughters. Her home, once silent and empty, was now filled with the noise and laughter of many children. The one who was once barren became a joyful mother. And what about the little boy she left at the temple? Samuel grew up in the presence of the Lord. He became one of the greatest prophets, priests, and leaders in the history of Israel. He was the one who would anoint the nation's first 2 kings, Saul and David. The son born from a heartbroken mother's desperate prayer became a pivotal figure who would shape the destiny of an entire nation. Hannah's story is a powerful reminder that God hears the cries of the brokenhearted. He sees the silent tears we cry when no one else is looking. Your pain, your longing, your deepest, most desperate prayers do not go unnoticed. Even when you feel misunderstood, forgotten, or completely alone, He is listening. Hannah's prayer wasn't eloquent or loud. It was just honest. She brought her authentic, broken self before God, and He met her there. He didn't just answer her prayer, He transformed her sorrow into joy, her barrenness into abundance, and used her sacrifice to change the course of history. So never, ever give up hope. Keep praying, keep trusting. Because you never know what incredible plan God has waiting on the other side of your heartfelt prayer.